Hey, everyone. Hoping everyone is good. Hoping everyone is great. We had a short hiatus. We're here now. I want to read you something from my book, Let Me Write This Gently, My Baby. This excerpt, poem, or however you read it, it's entitled, Don't Stay Where You Are Broke. I pray you don't stay rooted in the same place your tears baptize. Don't confuse stillness with surrender, because sitting in pain too long starts to feel like purpose, and we both know that's not your portion. I hope something sacred stirs in you, something loud enough to interrupt the spiral and soft enough to remind you that you still have a choice. You still have breath, and baby, breath is a vote for better. I pray peace pulls up on you like a best friend, and prosperity isn't something that you chase. It's something you attract because your boundaries finally have teeth. I hope every step you take is a sermon towards clarity and a walk away from chaos, because let's be real, sometimes we stay stuck in mud trying to bloom where we were only meant to pass through. I pray you stop mistaking familiar for safe and finally align with people who love your healing, not your hurting. Wouldn't it be beautiful to finally meet the version of you that isn't always making side deals with your lower self? I hope peace becomes your practice, not just a post. Don't just pray for it. You partner with it, meet it, honor it, and live like you deserve it. Every moment you give energy to what froze you, you rob your future of warmth. And healing doesn't happen in places where you go numb, so stop romanticizing your ruins. Investigate what you keep calling home when it's really just the last place you broke. You weren't made to be idle in your pain. The longer you wait, the more your heart files petitions on your behalf, begging you to do something different. And if the noise keeps drowning your wisdom, you aren't listening, you are surviving. I pray your ears get sharper than your excuses ever did, because at the end of the day, you're the only one responsible for how long you stayed and what you tried to finish. So here's the real question I can ask you. What you really gonna do now that you know better? After I wrote those words, I realized that, one of the most dangerous things that we can do is become comfortable inside of places that were only supposed to be temporary. And I think about that often because life has a way of convincing us that, we've survived something, then perhaps we're supposed to continue carrying it. And we'll survive, a loss or a heartbreak, and suddenly heartbreak becomes a room that we keep revisiting. We also, survive disappointment, and somehow disappointment starts having this permanent address in our lives. And then we'll survive unhealthy relationships, and before long we start mistaking, our ability to endure for being loyal in situations. The problem is that surviving something and belonging to something are two entirely different things. And just because you made it through a season doesn't mean that season was meant to become your permanent residence, my baby. That's why that line about sitting in pain too long starts to feel like purpose means so much to me, because pain has a way of becoming, convincing when it overstays its welcome. The longer something sits in your life, the easier it becomes to believe it belongs there. And honestly, the longer you carry a burden, the more normal the weight begins to feel. The longer that you tolerate certain behaviors, the more likely you are to stop questioning them altogether. Eventually, my baby, you stop asking whether something is healthy, and You start asking how much of it you can endure. And baby, that is dangerous. That is the most dangerous place to live, because endurance is not always, the evidence of how strong we are. Sometimes endurance is the evidence that you have forgotten that you have permission to leave a certain type of situation. Now I want you to think about this, or consider this just for a minute, because there are people who are listening to this podcast episode who have become very skilled at carrying things that were never assigned for them to hold. And my baby, some of you are carrying relationships. Oof, goodness. Some of y'all are carrying relationships that are only surviving because you do all the emotional labor. Some of y'all are carrying family expectations that have nothing to do with you, and who are just actually are at the center of everything. Some of y'all are also carrying some guilt from decisions you made years ago, even though you already paid the emotional price for them 100 times over. Some of you are carrying responsibility for the healing of people who have shown you absolutely no interest in healing themselves, and because you've carried it for so long, you no longer question whether it belongs to you. You just, adjust your posture around the whole weight of it. I need you to let things fall apart that have nothing to do with you. I need you to have, the vigor and the notion inside of you to just let it go. You keep carrying everybody else's bags while they tote absolutely nothing, and still keep beating you for some solutions or they need for you to show up. How unfair is that? But again, when everything becomes familiar to us, we don't question what it looks like or what it feels like, because we are used to sitting in it. And then I want to ask you, what if this other side of healing is not, you becoming stronger? What if the part of the healing is you finally becoming honest with yourself? Honest about what's hurting you, about what's draining you, about what's keeping you from showing up in your life. Honest about, when it's really resentment that's sitting in your heart. You being honest about the fact that some of the things you've been praying for will, require you to release the very things that you've been clinging to. Because I honestly think we spend a lot of time asking God for this peace while also protecting the chaos that interrupts it all. We want to ask God for clarity, and then we are holding on to the confusion, and we ask for the rest, and we just refuse to put down the responsibilities that were never ours in the first place. I need you to connect or disconnect the cord with family. Yeah, I need you to disconnect the cord with friends. I need you to disconnect the cord with people in your life who cause triggers and traumas and who pull you down to a place where you feel like you're down so bad you can't get back up. Again, this cycle of being familiar. It somehow teaches us that we have to stay there, because now opening up our mouths or doing something outside of that requires relationships to break. And then you are seen as a different person, but so what? At the end of the day, when you close that door and you are in the insides of the structure of your home, nobody is bearing the burden but you. And are you required to, bear your own burden when it's not yours in the first place? This is why we got to start utilizing these boundaries. We got to, boundaries are so important. And I know that, boundaries can be very uncomfortable, because many of us were taught that love meant, we got to be available for everybody. We were taught that being a good friend mean, you always got to say yeah. And we were taught that being a good partner, meant that there's a sacrifice that you have to do from the beginning to the end. We were taught that being a good parent or sibling or employee or, being a part of the community meant making sure that everybody else was good, even when you were quietly falling apart, somewhere along the way. Many people have learned that, this type of self-neglect is like this virtue that means you are a very good person. Suffering, is linked to just being a good and modest person. And then we also learned that, being tired is a proof of our commitment to a certain thing. You overextend yourselves. And somehow that is the evidence of being loved or you being loved. But my baby, love should not require your destruction. And I think some of us need to hear that again. Love, my baby, does not require your destruction. In any relationship, any tie, any commitment that demands you to continuously abandon yourself in order to maintain it will eventually leave you disconnected from who you are. Any environment that only works when you have to be small will eventually convince you that taking up space is being selfish. Any dynamic that punishes you for having needs will slowly teach you to stop expressing them. And then one day when you wake up wondering why you are exhausted, why you are feeling anxious, why you are resentful, the answer is often because you have spent years giving away pieces of yourself without replenishing what was lost. One of the most beautiful things that can happen during a healing journey is when you finally stop negotiating against your own well-being and your peace, my baby. You got to stop explaining why a boundary for you is necessary. You got to stop apologizing for needing to be at rest. You got to stop feeling guilty for protecting your own peace, and you got to start believing that every invitation deserves some form of access to you. After a while, you begin to understand that boundaries are not walls. They are not, this thing to just push people out and keep them away. They really are the bridges that teach people how to enter into your life respectfully. And they communicate what is healthy when it comes to you, what is sustainable when it shows up for you, and what would no longer be tolerated. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard to tell people about what your expectation is, especially when you have always given them access to your life. But there I say again, when you are in the four corners of your home, and when you are completely exhausted, who is the burden bearer? Nobody but you. There's something else that, we hardly discuss, and I want you to take note on the difference between being familiar and being safe. Those two things are not the same. There are people who have literally spent years in environments that were never safe for them emotionally or spiritually or mentally. But because those environments were familiar, they convinced themselves that they were secure. And familiarity can create a false sense of safety. Just because something is predictable does not mean that it's healthy, my baby. Just because, you're always done it doesn't mean that it deserves to continue. Just because something has always had access to you doesn't mean that they are entitled to maintain that access forever. Growth often requires us to disappoint the version of ourselves that was comfortable settling. Think about that. Every meaningful transformation requires a departure from something. You leave old thinking behind. You leave limiting beliefs behind. You leave the unhealthy patterns all the way back there. I need you to leave those relationships behind. I need you to leave those identities behind. This is always a release attached to growth. That's why healing can feel so uncomfortable, because part of the process involves grieving who you used to be while also making room for who you are becoming. And that brings me to, one of these favorite lines from this passage that I wrote. I hope peace becomes your practice and not just a post. Because peace is more than a quote. Peace is more than just this personal mantra. Peace is more than something that we type online. Peace is reflected in the decisions we make every single day. It's reflected in who, we answer to. It's reflected in what we tolerate. It's reflected in how we speak to ourselves. It shows up in the standards we maintain in the environments we choose to remain in. Peace is not something that magically appears after life becomes perfect, my baby. Peace is you cultivating through intentional choices that align with the life that you are trying to build. And I think that's why I ended the passage with a question instead of a statement. What you really gonna do now that you know better? Because at some point, my baby, eventually, your knowledge demands that you participate now. There comes a moment and a point where you can no longer pretend you don't see what is going on. You can't unsee what you see. You can no longer ignore what has been revealed, and you can't keep blaming yesterday for the decisions that belong to today. Healing. Healing becomes less about what happened to you and more about what you're choosing to move forward. So, today I don't want you leaving this episode focused on your mistakes. I don't want you replaying every regret or every disappointment. I want you leaving this episode with a deeper understanding that you still have a choice. As long as there is breath in your body, there is still an opportunity to choose differently. There is always an opportunity for you to honor yourself. And I need you to create those boundaries. Maybe there is still an opportunity to release what no longer serves you. And there's still an opportunity to stop building your life around, this thing that we often do, which is survive. And I need you to start building your life around peace, because my baby, you deserve more than just simply making it through. You deserve to experience the fullness of a life that isn't constantly, needing for you to isolate and abandon yourself in order to maintain it. And listen, if nobody has told you lately, I want to tell you now, you are allowed. You are allowed to leave the places that no longer honor who you have become. I need you to choose peace. I need you to understand where your healing comes from. I need you to sit in your healing long enough for you to heal those parts of you that needs to be healed. And I also want you to know that you are allowed to grow. And you are also allowed to become someone that your former self prayed for. Because you can be all of those things right now. Until next time, my baby, I need you to be very, 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 very gentle with yourself.